Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Doug Pernikoff, and Cindy Vickers, our wonderful co-host, is back with us. And we have a very, very special guest that's been with us once before, and it's always exciting to have her back because she travels all over the world, meeting wonderful people, but nobody as wonderful as us here at Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show, and that's Dr. Ellen Direnfeld, and she's the nutritionist, animal nutritionist extraordinaire. And we're very happy to have you here today.
Good to be back.
Good.
Now, do you travel by plane, by donkey, or by boat? Ship primarily.
Mostly by plane.
Mostly by plane.
Although I did have to take the mule once.
So in situ, when she's in the place, she does have to do that sometimes. Very good.
Did they get a blanket on top of that mule?
It even had a saddle.
Now, I'm going to take exception to this right off the bat. I'm going to guess that it was a donkey and not a mule. Those mules are really big, and if they kick you,
it would have been a donkey. You're right.
Probably.
She's right.
Probably a donkey.
Yeah, and the mules are in Missouri, and the donkeys are anywhere around
They're
the
very
world.
famous, the Missouri mules.
They are?
Yes, they are.
Beautiful animals.
I've met them.
Have you? I have too.
Down in Columbia?
Yeah, they used to be a popular item for our one of the deans we used to have, and he brought a pair in, and made a big deal out of them. But you know what? This is not only your show, and
sorry,
I really don't appreciate
I got confused. I got mixed up. And it was,
Hey, it's animals.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
What did those mules eat? Okay, I got us back on
Mule
track.
food. Okay.
Carry on.
So I thought it would be interesting today. I mean, we can speak with Ellen about a million topics because she's been involved in so many different exercises and events and research projects. I'm just totally impressed with her. She's just so bright.
And I can verify, yes, that she's sort of semi-genius, if not completely
She
genius.
is a genius, yeah. And I just want to go on one of her trips. In the last month, I know, at least going backwards from recent, she was in Costa Rica. Before that, she was in Brazil. Right before that, you were in
Seoul,
South Korea. And right before that, Myanmar, which is wonderful. I've been to Myanmar. I love it there.
Brazil is the #1 destination for butt implants.
And that, my folks, will be another show.
I can't say anything especially interesting or intellectual about the topic, so I'm just going to throw in those colorful tidbits.
You're absolutely correct, and I have some stories after the show I'll share with you about that. Anyway, so I thought an interesting topic we might try and start with, and we can go anywhere we want with this, Ellen, but I know that in your role at the zoo particularly, we're always looking to create new products that are going to be palatable, that are going to be useful, and a lot of times you start with supplements wherein you take basic components that we know individually have value or certainly are not harmful, and then as you build them together, you have a new product that can then be useful or even add value to a nutritional product. Is that correct?
Indeed. There's lots of different compounds out there.
And I think it's fun. I would think that, I know you're working with a company called Zootrologics, and you have just created with another fella a really interesting product for starting with game fowl and poultry and stuff. But I found it really interesting because, again, the carrier agent was one issue, but most importantly, you put all these interesting components together, and somehow, some way, the products seem to be helping animals survive otherwise where they're under stress or whatever. So that's a perfect example, isn't it?
Right. Well, none of the ingredients in that particular product, which is actually called Resilience, is unknown. It's been used in human food chain for centuries, actually, or each of those ingredients have been used in the human food chain for centuries. But now we're just adding them in a mixed blend as a supplement to do different things in the digestive tract.
But I think that's so interesting. It's like basically it's a customized, collective. And hopefully we do these things, and this is what opens new doors of opportunity.
Well, so that begs the question. Is that saying that they are not getting sufficient nutrition from their regular diet?
Not necessarily. Some of the things that are being used, some of these newer ingredients are being added as antibiotic replacements, for example, like Purdue is doing, adding oregano to the water of their chickens, or even thyme to the feed. and taking away antibiotics.
Which are a concern to users, consumers, and stuff sometimes.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I won't buy anything if I know that the animal's been given antibiotics.
So some of these particular compounds in those natural ingredients have antibiotic activity.
But even in the human world and in the domestic pets, we're always looking for the organic alternative, right? And the holistic or the healthy. We think it's healthier. We assume it's less dangerous or less potentially a problem for us. And but I still think it's interesting because what you're doing is you're like puzzling with knowledge you have to collectively say, hey, let's put this puzzle together a little differently, and how might that provide value for for an existing product or an existing formulation or a protocol, a feeding protocol. And in the zoo world, you have to be very creative, responsive, adaptive, and these are tools of your trade, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For example, I know some of the anteaters, it's not legal to add to diets in the United States, but in Europe, they add formic acid to anteater diets as a palatant. Now, some ants leave a formic acid trail. So the thought was that the anteaters are going for the formic acid. Actually, when I've spoken to people in Brazil that are anteater experts, the anteaters avoid the ants that are chemically defended. So that whole theory of formic acid
out the door.
being the palatant is probably not supported in ecology.
You mean not all ants will leave a trail of that formic acid? It's a protectant for them.
Yeah, the soldier ants would be the formic acid ants. And those are the ones that they're going to steer clear of because they're heavily defended by this chemistry.
Wow. I wonder if E.O. Wilson knows that work. You know,
I'm sure. I'm sure they do.
He's the ant specialist, so...
But ants, ants, not ants specifically, but insects. Insect meal is getting a big look-see in the feed industry right now, not only as a protein replacement for humans, but also in the pet industry. And so
So you're talking about actually producing and harvesting insect instead of whatever.
Cows
or whatever.
To replace poultry meals or fish meals, things like that.
Yeah.
Some of the fish meals aren't going to be available with the marine industry or the marine fisheries industry.
So
right.
Does an insect have the same protein components, like the same amino acids or whatever the components are, as as poultry or fish or?
That's exactly what's being looked at right now, is the detailed chemical composition of these various protein sources. And it looks like across the board there's some pretty similarities in the amino acid balance. So they're all like deficient in methionine, for example.
So that would be just brilliant. Even ecologically, to not have to consume acres and acres and acres of land to try to support have pastures of cows.
I kind of look at it kind of another way too, that instead of taking this large mammal source of protein and bringing it down to a elemental use, you're actually taking these little insects and building them up, and you have to have enough volume to provide the matter, but maybe there's a lot less wastage. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's work done out of Europe particularly that shows there's much less greenhouse gas produced by production of insects as the protein source.
You mean insects don't flatulate as much?
Exactly.
Good.
Is there any insect, or is there a particular insect you're going that's cockroaches, or like this is the one we're looking at, or?
Well, in the ag industry, cricket meal has been around for a long time. There's actually black soldier fly meal that's been used, and there's a lot of research done on that. For years, it's never really been picked up on, and right now it's getting a lot of interest.
How about grasshoppers and that family?
Grasshoppers certainly get eaten by a lot of cultures. They haven't been produced commercially, although there are some locust production, so that's in that same orthopteran group.
Yeah, because every time I traveled in Asia, everywhere I went, you drive along the roads and you've got barbecued or crispy crickets or something, and you eat them like like sunflower seeds as a treat. And I did that all over the place. It was great.
And crickets get used in Mexican culture. There's cricket tacos.
Oh, really?
Like that.
Wait, let's go back to you eating grasshoppers for just a minute. So were they crunchy? Did you recognize?
Crunchy.
Yeah, and did you recognize them?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So it looked just like a grasshopper. And did it have any? Were they seasoned?
Yeah, they season them, and what you do, they have oils. They're usually using coconut oil or something like that. And I mean, even in the streets of the cities, they have these big, you can eat all over the place. You'll see a big kind of bowl, stainless steel, not stainless steel, they use rust iron, I don't know, but it's just loaded with big grasshoppers that are fried and crispy. And you just take a scoop out, and then on the roads, we would see them, they'd be selling them in little baggies. And you just buy a couple bags and you sit there and drive and have treats. And it was fine. I never thought a problem about it.
Did you think that it tasted good?
Yeah, they were good, very good. They were tasty, they were crunchy, they had a little bit of oil in them, and they did have some kind of seasoning. It was just pepper. And then, but I didn't know if I could do grubs and things like that. The Chinese, of course, will eat anything that's moving, and sometimes when they're not moving, they'll eat it. But you've probably had more experience than I have, Dr. Ellen.
I
But,
prefer it not moving.
yeah.
It's just
But people, they do
my
eat some
opinion.
products that are still eating. They're still moving.
Oh,
They-
yeah. That's
they
like
do that.
Andrew Zimmern, watching one of his shows. Like,
But they're paying them a lot to eat that stuff. So I'll try that if they'll pay me. But yeah, no, overall, I think that's been fast in coming, an opportunity. And I think that we met another guy who was developing fish foods, and he was using these tiny little invertebrates, right? And he was figuring out ways to concentrate them so that he could put them into a fish meal of some sort and then feed it to tropical fish or even commercial fishing. And I thought that was a cool idea, really cool.
So what was what was the real impetus behind this? Was it money? Is it to have better sources of protein, quicker ways to feed animals? I mean,
I think it's an extrapolation of culture, of multiple cultures, and people have been doing this in populations that are less fortunate. They can't go to the local grocery store and buy everything, but they'll eat and try things all over the place, and it works for them. And now, as humans get more organic in their interest, I think they want to look at those cultural aspects and try and extrapolate and bring it into the fold. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, I mean, if you're talking for humans,
Yeah, I'm talking
but
for animals.
Often we're looking at the natural feeding ecology of these animals, and this is what they eat naturally. So if we can cultivate their natural foods, they're recognized as foods, and the right size, shape, movement, things like that. So like the little rotifers that he's talking about for some of the aquatic animals. But some of the things that we have to study are how to feed those prey items correctly to optimize their nutrition. Because if we don't feed the prey properly, that can change the whole nutritional composition. So comparing...
Right, but what I'm saying is, for how many years just has, just in the United States, has every zoo or place where people are keeping animals been around, and now we're studying insects?
Well, that's a good point.
Why now?
Well, as we said one other time, Ellen was like and we may break in a moment, but just to keep going, Ellen was at kind of the threshold of animal nutrition in zoos. She was the first generation of people that really came forth, scientists, and said, here are the things we need to look at. And as I remember as a zoo vet, one of the first big topics was, here we are, we've been feeding commercialized grain-based foods or whatever, pelleted foods, and we go, wait a minute, we should be feeding produce that's fresh, just like the animals would eat. Or in this case, we should be finding other alternative protein substances, insects, if it's even gorillas and things like this, big animals that are related to us, or chimpanzees. They're eating and grubbing for insects all their life. And if it works for them, they're pretty close to us. It could be an opportunity. But that was the first phase of, as I remember, zoo animal nutrition, was to first assess what we're doing, what we're not doing right. And we try and control the whole thing because it's easier to buy a bag of food than it is to keep produce going or fresh fish or whatever. But that's not always the best for the critter. Is that right?
Sure. And zoos have been feeding mealworms and crickets to insectivores for years and keeping their own colonies, and there's commercial suppliers of mealworms and crickets for feeding those and hobbyists, mostly in the reptile and bird groups.
Well, baby mice
so
too,
mammals,
and smaller mammals.
But what we're looking for now are some more alternatives, because we do see some of the limitations of mealworms and crickets as the only food sources out there for these insectivores.
We're going to stop for just a moment. It's a great discussion, and we'll be back. Again, it's Dr. Doug Pernikoff, Cindy Vickers, and Dr. Ellen Dierenfeld. We'll be back with Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show in just a moment. Thanks so much for listening. Here we are into segment 2 of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. I'm looking at my wonderful co-host, Cindy Vickers. She's just staring at me. I know it's lust, but I get it. And over to my right is my wonderful new guest, Dr. Ellen Direnfeld, our nutritionist. And we had just a really interesting discussion that we're going to carry on. And I think Ellen had a question from Cindy. Why don't you repeat that?
I actually was not looking at you.
Oh, I thought
was
you were.
looking mostly at Ellen, and
Well, she's over there.
I had
and
a question. For 1 second, I just glanced over, just respectfully waiting for you to finish your little spiel. Anyway, you said, I don't know what we said on the air and what we said off the air, but the particular fly was mentioned, and is this fly a special fly? This is a house fly?
The black soldier fly.
Black soldier fly. I'm going to have to write that down. I can't remember this.
It looks more like a small bee or wasp, so it doesn't look exactly like a house fly.
Like a Cuterebra? I mean, those are the same.
Cuba Libra?
Cuterebra fly is not a non-biting, non-sucking fly that looks like a bee.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is, and they're pretty much pan-global, so they're everywhere, and they don't spread disease the way houseflies do.
Are they poop eaters or what?
They can live on a number of substrates, so they get used for like restaurant waste disposal, as well as fecal waste. So, yeah, that was one experiment we did actually when I was at the zoo, was to see which feces they preferred. So
Lovely.
I told you, Ellen not only has some interesting ideas, she's a little peculiar. No.
I thought my job was a little difficult some days.
They grew the best and hatched out on elephant poop, actually.
Oh, wow.
And it turns out that was right, because they need the air space, and it's got bigger particle size and stuff. The other poops were too concentrated. Really.
And also less digested, I imagine. Would that be true?
Yeah, the elephant poo was less digested, yeah.
Right.
So.
Good to know.
I have to tell you one...
But what's the other thing about, you started to say about grubs and something else, and why?
Oh, well, so the main problem with the mealworms and crickets that we've had nutritional issues with in feeding insectivores is that because they don't have a skeleton, they're deficient in calcium. So essentially we have to supplement with calcium, or we have calcium deficiencies in any animals that eat mealworms or crickets.
Keep your hands on the table.
You know what? My hands were on the table. What you don't understand is I'm muting myself because I am putting my papers on top of my little button. So
Black soldier
I mean, I
fly.
have so much value to say. We don't want that to happen. So I'm sorry. The
but that's
black soldier fly has an
has a calcified exoskeleton.
exoskeleton.
So
Yes.
it's different than most other insects.
So they get calcium.
So the animals that eat them do get the calcium.
Then you don't have to supplement that, or do you have to find out the hard way, and that's by animals not doing well because of a lack of calcium.
Now, one of the problems with the black soldier fly larvae, and like worm larvae, is with this calcified exoskeleton, they can be less digestible. So if you're an animal that eats your worms whole, like a big frog, they can just sort of pass right out and not be digested. So you have to
Masticate.
you either have to chew them, or if you poke a pinhole in them. But that's kind of management-wise.
That could be time-consuming with every little fly, wouldn't you say?
But we did do a digestion trial with whole versus crushed black soldier fly larvae fed to mountain chicken frogs, actually.
I mean, Ellen, you must be hell
Just getting
fun
weirder
on
and
a date.
weirder and weirder.
And saw really,
But wait
really
a minute,
nice
the
differences.
larvae, not larva.
yeah.
The larvae, isn't that the worm stage?
Yes.
So it still has the exoskeleton?
Yeah, this is the stage that actually gets fed out, is the larvae.
That makes sense. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the flies would fly away.
Yeah. And then,
Wow. Okay.
but what's cool about black soldier fly larvae, in terms of production, is that once they're ready to pupate, and so they're growing in their substrate, and once they're ready to pupate and go to the next stage, they seek a different environment, a drier environment. So they'll basically collect themselves, and they'll crawl out of their substrate, and they can just drop right into a bucket, and then you've got this bucket of cleaned larvae ready
wait a
to
minute.
feed out.
And I want to ask the obvious question: is that so? They're actually
There's an
have a
obvious
process of-
question?
yeah. Well, I'm trying to make one obvious, but so the organisms are managed in a way. Are they collecting and harvesting these adult flies in order for them to provide the future pupae, and then are the pupae part of the commercial operation? So they're contained in a organized fashion. I mean, it's not random. Let's go out and find some critters out in the woods.
Right, and
Right.
this is the whole challenge to production, is scaling it up to make it viable for
That's a good point.
commercial production. Absolutely.
Okay, so I've got one other question about this. So as you're looking at, when you were talking about doing the supplements, are you targeting particular animals? Because there was just some reference to animals that are more stressed, maybe the animals that receive these kind of supplements, or does it?
Well, I'm going to let Ellen talk about this, but this particular product, Resilience, was designed by Ellen and another gentleman on behalf of both zoofowl and domestic poultry, if I understand correctly. So, but we're seeing now, we're talking about this product, it may fit other species, even if it's modified a bit. Go ahead, Ellen.
Right. I mean, in addition to some of the antimicrobial properties that we know are in the ingredients, there's probiotic. So it's got good fiber sources that can lead to proper digestive tract bacteria and health. There's good antioxidant activity in some of the ingredients. So anything with antioxidants, if you're stressed, you need higher levels of antioxidants. So certainly that can help in stressful situations, be it shipment stress or behavioral stresses or even disease stresses.
Are there vitamins components in there? I can't remember.
Not individual, but any of the plant components would have certain vitamins added to, I mean, just as part of their matrix.
In the Resilience.
Yeah.
In this
it's not
particular-
added separately as a synthetic vitamin, for
But
example.
then could be. I mean, you could modify that any way you wanted to now that you have your core product.
Sure.
And you can add to the components and change the recipe.
Another ingredient that's in there is chia flour. For example, chia seeds have some of the highest level of omega-3 fatty acids in the plant community.
And that's real popular in human products now, or
Exactly.
dairy products.
So do nutritionists for pets, I think I'm going to guess that I know the answer, but do they go so far as look at the vitamins and say this is a fat-soluble vitamin, so I make sure that we feed it in conjunction with something that's fatty?
Water-soluble.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
it's a
definitely.
resounding yes. They're not talking. They forgot it's radio. They're shaking their heads. I'll speak on their behalf. They're both shaking their heads.
We are very uncomfortable talking on the phone.
So scary.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing about this particular product. It's an oily base because a lot of these active ingredients are essential oils. So the smells that you smell from oregano, for example, is an essential oil. So there has to be an oily base for it to be absorbed in the body.
And how about just for persistence of value. I mean, if it dries out, the oily base, does that contain moisture and help it prolong its life, its usable life, or it's not an issue?
Actually, I don't know.
Oh.
These are some of the
Stumped her.
the shelf life aspects are being considered right now in terms of testing. But it's a unique form because it's more of a paste type product, which is kind of a toothpaste consistency. So it's kind of an unusual type of supplement. It's not a powder that you sprinkle over.
Yeah.
So you just stick it in their food?
Well,
Or do you
she's
just tell them to
talking-
open their mouth and you put it on their tongue?
She's got it's true, but she has, they're designing almost like a syringe we use for some supplements, even in veterinary medicine now, like probiotics. So you have a syringe kind of structure, and you've got a dosing wheel on it, and you decide what is an appropriate dose. You pop it to them, and it's very simple. And it's a nice way
It depends
to
on
manage.
whether you're dosing an individual or a group. So if you're feeding a group, then you definitely want to be mixing it in with the feed as opposed to picking up every individual animal.
Okay.
But yeah.
And I can't remember, does this have to be refrigerated? No, I don't think so. Which is another great advantage. You know, I mean, if you put it in some kind of aluminum foil or some kind of structure like that, it will stay a long, long time on the shelf and still be useful, which is another key component. I mean, so many components to making a food stuff, we don't think about it because we just get it, you know. But when you start dissecting, you have to know palatability, you have to know the efficacy of the products, you have to know the survivability, how to store it, how to deliver it, on and on and on. It's a challenge.
Yeah, the other good thing about this particular paste product is it doesn't freeze, so it can be even stored outside in a shed. Well, the oil content's so high
Yeah, that's
that it's
true.
not going to freeze.
I wonder if I can put in my radiator in my car in the wintertime just to keep things going. Go ahead.
I don't have a question.
You
now.
said so. Yes, you did.
It did not come
said
from.
so.
N-
I heard you.
See, that's what happens when you get a little bit older. You start hearing things, voices, or you're off your
Well,
meds. Either one of the two.
I don't know. I talk to each of my shoulders. There's a guy over there every time, the good Doug and the bad Doug, and they all talk to me. Anyway, well, we're going to continue. We're going to talk about another special product that Ellen and I have been very interested in for some time. It's a plant called Moringa, and we're going to talk about Moringa in the next segment. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is fascinating, by the way.
It is. Dr. Ellen Direnfeld, wonderful Cindy Vickers, and the amazingly handsome Dr. Doug Pernikoff of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show. We'll be right back. Hi, we're back, segment 3 of Dr. Doug's All Things Animal radio show, and Cindy and I have been drilling Dr. Ellen Direnfeld, our animal nutritionist, with lots of interesting questions. We've learned all about bugs to eat, best bugs to eat, and how to make diets using natural organic products. And as I introduced at the very last of last segment, Ellen and I have both been very interested in a product that comes from the wild, and its name is Moringa. It's a plant. And I know all about it, but I'm going to let Ellen talk about it. I mean, first of all, a little bit about its history.
Well, I don't know that I'd call it a product as much as a
It's an
ingredient.
It's a nature's product.
Okay.
Nature
Well,
made
is it
this.
a plant or is
Yes.
it not a plant? Okay.
It's a tree or a shrub. Depends on how you've cultivated it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. But it's very rapidly growing. It's not a legume. So it's a non-leguminous plant, but it actually...
Is it an armgume?
Yeah, that's it.
Gosh.
I'm so funny.
So funny.
But even though it's not a legume, it's got very high protein content. So a lot of leaves of non-leguminous plants don't have particularly high protein. But moringa leaves, some of the analyses are up over 40% on dry matter, which is really quite high. So the quality of the protein and the quantity is very high. It's evidently very rapid growing, depending on the environment, but it's a tropical and subtropical plant. Some reports say it takes a lot of water, some say it takes not so much water, so there's a little bit of difference there. I imagine it depends on the soil
Yeah, you're probably right.
as well. But you can harvest up to 7 times a year with this particular plant.
If you're just doing leaves, but you can do
Yeah.
other components.
Yes.
Well, what do you mean? The roots, the
They have these
bark,
big
or-
seed pods, bark. The roots, stems, the roots have to be cooked because there has some toxicity issues. I mean, you don't need to because the plant matter and the leaf matter is what's used mostly. And it's just, you can even get it in health food stores today as a leaf powder for teas or soups or even to mix into foodstuffs. But the United States is, let's a little bit about the geography because the United States is the last I think, of the Western civilized communities that's really acknowledging it. And this has been around for thousands of years, probably. Or at
Right,
least
but we don't have a lot of tropical and subtropical in the U.S.
No, but
Let's
we've
face
been
it.
we've been
It's
but
not
we've
one
been
of our
transporting and buying and shipping and selling for. And this
Oh, sure.
was first developed in India, is one of the places. And there's 9 species I think recognized around the world. Africa's taken a big interest. They have their own primary species. And now throughout Central America and South America, there are countries that are really creating big farms. And again, as Ellen said, you can grow it as big bush, which makes it easier to manage, or you can grow it. It's called the...
Miracle tree.
what's the other name because of the pod? It's the pod. The seed pod is real long, and it has all kinds of value too. All kinds of special oils that you'd use for fuel or burning, for cooking.
And evidently, one of the most expensive uses of the oil is in the watchmaking industry. It's a very pure oil, and was used extensively in the
It's like a
watchmaking
rare metal.
industry.
Yeah.
So you can, as far as you know, you can use the oil for cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if it's like a high heat oil or a low heat oil? I mean, that's
That I'm not
I
sure.
know. I really went.
Those are good questions,
That
though.
was-
I don't know.
We can find out.
Is
for
it
you.
supposed to be good for your skin?
Everything. I mean, it has high calcium levels. It's been used in lactating cattle and stuff like that, but it's also, it's got so many properties. And when you hear these things, you always go, is that black magic or is that real? And we both attended a recent, last year, that one place down in Mizzou had a kind of a biodiversity and plant utilization seminar. And one of the great researchers in this was Dr. Fahey from Johns Hopkins University, and he's done legitimate studies. And I think there were 2 or 3 elements. It has an antimicrobial value,
It's very high antioxidant.
antioxidant. There were like 3 or 4 things that he said we can definitely say are useful. It was was it anti-cancerous or something else that was very useful? What was the one body system that it was so supportive of? I can't think right now, but anyway, it's one of those dream plants that really has a lot of elements. Like you said, the biggest issue is that you can't typically or easily grow it in temperate or colder climates. So you have to either develop indoor growing, but it's a product that the World Health Organization has identified as a product that could feed the world because of its availability, its ability in arid lands. And so we're really excited. We're talking about all the time opportunities to try and do something
Well,
special.
how can we get it?
Well, I can sell you an ounce tomorrow.
Now, it's in the health food stores, and there's actually a Missouri production.
Is it?
We found out
Oh, yeah,
at
yes.
this
Southern
symposium.
Missouri, right?
Yeah,
Really?
in southwestern
Southwestern
Missouri.
Right.
There was a.
And I think there will be systems developed for it once it becomes more interesting to people. There's a growing area. I went to the facility in southern, I think it's Fort Myers, outside of Fort Myers in Florida, and it's a test thing. They do lots of different interesting or natural plants and fruits that you can use and harvest into a human opportunity. And they have moringa plots there, and they have little trees you can buy or seeds you can generate. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's really
So
neat.
generally speaking, it's not something where you would like take the leaf and eat it as a vegetable. It would be something that
could.
would get into.
It is used that way.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
The green leaf?
Yeah. My friend Doug has some plants growing in his backyard, and he just picks up a couple leaves. And there is a dosing that's kind of being developed. You need so many grams of this a day to really get the effect of it. But none of that's been real standardized, and that's some of the things we want to do and study and bring this to a commercial opportunity, not only for humans, but no one's touched it for small animals, pets. And then you just sent me an article the other day about cattle use,
Well,
right?
it certainly gets used in Africa and in Latin America in the agriculture industry as a replacement protein for soybean meal, as well as alfalfa meal, some of the other green leaf meals.
Into
Poultry, rabbits, pigs, and it gets eaten by ruminants as well.
Yeah.
So it can be eaten by any livestock species.
So we need to get it here and then not pollute it.
Right. Well, the purists want to develop it for third world opportunities to feed the world, and we're interested in doing that. But we're also interested in trying to find commercial uses for livestock or pets or even humans. And we can talk about it all day. I just love this product.
When you said it's sold sometimes, did you say like at in health food stores? Is it in that case? Is it sold as a capsule or?
I've seen it in capsules, but again, it's there goes Cindy. I've seen it in powder. It's always powdered leaf, and then they can put it in a capsule, or they can put it into tea.
Yeah.
Or soups.
Into a tea bag or something.
Yeah, some people actually sprinkle it into a vegetable dish or something.
Yeah, but so at the moment,
That's-
generally how people buy it is kind of in a powder.
It's a leaf powder.
Yeah, just the leaf component. And they just don't know a lot about it in the U.S. There's some activity in California, and there's some activity in Florida, but those are the two primary sites I'm aware of
That are studying
that's studying it.
Moringa.
There's one graduate student that I learned of that was trained in the U.S. in St. Louis, I think at WashU, and now is doing some specific genetic work on the material, the Moringa plants. He's got all the different serotypes or whatever we call them, species, and he's down in Mexico, I think, at a station. So yeah, I've even talked to Monsanto. Dr. Mahoney was the past. He was the past CEO of Monsanto. Yeah, I know Monsanto always gets questionable concerns because
let's
of the
do it.
GMO.
And then let's destroy it so we can't eat it.
Right. Well, thanks for the sponsorship,
That's
Monsanto.
okay. Sorry. That's very strong feelings about that.
Yeah, a lot of people do, but they're still a good company. They just, they have to just, figure out what's good and what's bad for the world. But anyway. So, anything else? You've written an article on Moringa, haven't you, in the past?
Well, I worked with a colleague in Tanzania, and we just analyzed a number of locally available alternative feed ingredients, and Moringa was one of them.
The problem is, again, how do you standardize it so that Moringa, grown here in Missouri is the same as Moringa in southern Florida, as wherever, or in Africa? And I don't know how much difference there's noted between species of Moringa, is there?
There is some, but there's probably more difference between stage of growth, just as in any plant. So early growth hay anywhere is different than second or third or fourth cutting.
Well, maybe you do it
Based
like
on
coffee.
soil, moisture, things like that.
Maybe
Heat,
light.
everything.
Maybe you sell it like coffee, where you say maybe it's not completely standardized, but you're saying that. I'm not saying this, but Kona coffee is the best because it's grown under these conditions, and Brazilian coffee is the best because it's grown under these conditions. I'm just trying to help you with your marketing.
No, I think
Yeah,
it's
I appreciate
a good idea, actually. And, I was in Panama, and I got to see all the coffee plantations, and these are the most valuable coffee mountain, in the world. And you go to another country, and theirs is the best.
And that's going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Right,
That's,
right.
if it takes off, it's going to happen anyway. So, no, you want the Moringa that's grown in Africa, and you're like, no, in the United States it is.
I kind of think we want to
washed.
standardize it here in the U.S., and then we can sell it out or sell our methods out. But I think it does have credibility, whether it's right or wrong. There's a mental credibility that comes with having things done in the U.S. or in Europe, and that might be just a promotional or a way to do this correctly and get the best run with it. I don't know.
The other interesting thing about Moringa as a feed ingredient is that it doesn't have a lot of plant secondary compounds, negative secondary compounds.
What does that mean?
Which a lot of natural plants that are used in feed as feed ingredients, depending on how they're grown or where they're grown, can have nasty compounds that'll decrease digestibility or may even have some toxicities.
So it might be a silica, it might be a metal or a mineral that's
Or
too much.
tannins or alkaloids or...
Yeah.
That is a naturally occurring part of the plant, or
That's
something
correct.
that's picked up?
No, it's naturally occurring, and Moringa doesn't seem to have that. It's not showing up in the multiple studies that have been done. So it's very low in these secondary plant compounds.
Very, very good. We're going to stop right now and come back with our fourth recap segment in just a moment. Great discussion, great products. Think Moringa. So from Ellen and Cindy and myself, Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. We're in our final segment, our recap segment for Dr. Doug's All Things Animal Radio Show. And Cindy and I have had a really good discussion with Dr. Ellen Direnfeld, our nutritionist extraordinaire. And Ellen, I just want to thank you for another great session and another great topic. You're just amazing. You always have. We haven't even touched the surface of Ellen. We'll have her back like once a quarter or something.
Oh,
just
for
to
sure.
Touch her elbows and
So
learn something from her.
Again, so we can increase our vocabulary.
Yeah. Well, you brought the word up today. What was it again?
Nebbish.
Nebbish.
That we were doing. We were doing our Yiddish descriptors.
Probably the first time on this radio show. But anyway, I just want to thank everybody. We talked about natural elements going into supplementation of feeding schedules for both humans, but mostly we were talking about animals. And we ended up with a wonderful discussion on Moringa, which I believe Dr. Dierenfeld and myself, and now we have a new advocate
I'm a
and
believer.
surrogate. Okay,
I want
so
it.
we want you on the next radio show. Just in the middle of the discussion, just ring out Moringa, Moringa.
Well, you know I can.
It's a dance too, isn't it?
It's merengue.
Merengue.
Oh, Moringa. Oh, I'm sorry.
Merengue.
Moringa.
Anyway, it's a great product. I want people out there to take a look and listen and learn about Moringa because we think we can do something to help feed the world. And I think we have any questions. Do you want to say any final comments?
Not really.
Oh, she's so
she's
shy.
finished. She was contracted, and the money was just for like 46 minutes, and it's over.
That's it. Are you really that? No.
That's the way it works.
All right, I can talk about one other
business.
invertebrate that's got high calcium levels.
Oh, please
Yeah,
do.
go for it.
Pill bugs.
Pill bugs.
Or
Oh, I love those.
roly-polies.
We used to call them potato bugs.
They have high calcium?
Yep, because they're not an insect. They're a crustacean.
Oh my God.
They're related to...
I used to name them when I was a little kid. I'd go out and pick up a brick, and they're, the little guys that
And
look
then
like...
you'd pour salt on them, and that
No,
was what you did to your
those are my
friends?
friends, and I was sure that I saw the same ones every day. So there's Harry,
But-
there's Henry, there's Joey.
But no, those are a good source of calcium for insectivores. that-
Or anybody?
Well, I don't know that anybody eats...
Well,
I don't,
but
I don't know that
if they
humans-
did-
I think you have to snort
I
them
mean,
up.
no, but
Like
if it's a good calcium source, is it a good calcium source, regardless of what eats it? or
Yeah, you
who
probably
eats
need
it?
a
Yes, it
couple
could be.
scoops of them.
Well, yeah.
Make them like in
That's just
chocolate chip
one.
cookies. Just put them in. You'll think they're the
Well,
little chocolate chips.
think of it as eating a lobster with the shell on. You don't do it too often, but shrimp
do.
you might.
Yeah.
But that's the same concept. 'cause
Okay.
The calcium's in the shell.
So go home with your grandchild.
That's what you
start
should
picking up bricks and looking for the little
Those
pill
little
bugs.
No, or you just dissolve your eggshells in some vinegar and put it in your soup.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds all right. Nah.
It does.
It's one of the purest forms of calcium carbonate.
Oh, that's
Thank
true.
you, Dr.
Yeah.
Ellen.
Oh my gosh.
Indeed.
Whatever. I'm out of this group. Okay. I want to thank everybody again for listening. We had a great show. Cindy, you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Thank you. Ellen, you want to say goodbye?
Thanks very much.
And this is Dr. Doug Pernikoff. If you're looking for training support from Cindy, call us at 636-530-1808. If you're looking for veterinary support, call Dr. Pernikoff at 636-530-1808 at the Clarkson Wilson Veterinary Clinic. And we're here to educate, entertain, and enjoy one another. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Let's get dangerous.